What if I told you Meghan Markle physically could never have been pregnant, but still claimed to be twice? In a jaw-dropping turn, Meghan's ex-husband Trevor Engelson has reportedly leaked private medical records alleging that she had a full hysterectomy years before ever meeting Prince Harry. He says, quote, "She told me herself she could never carry a child." If true, this doesn't just challenge the story of Archie and Lilibet's birth, it detonates it. What's in the documents? Why has no one seen the children in Santa Barbara? And how deep does the royal silence really go? Stay tuned, because what we reveal next will shake the very foundation of the Sussex fairy tale. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What if the fairy tale image of the royal family that millions around the world have come to admire? An American actress marrying a British prince, building a family, raising royal children across continents, was based on a lie so explosive, so deeply buried, that even Buckingham Palace dares not address it directly? What if Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana, the two children that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle claim as their own, are not biologically Meghan's, nor were they ever born in the way the public was led to believe? In a stunning turn of events, Meghan Markle's former husband, Hollywood producer Trevor Engelson, has allegedly leaked private medical documents and issued personal testimony that could change everything. Documents that, if proven genuine, reveal that Meghan underwent a hysterectomy before she ever met Prince Harry. In simple terms, she physically could not have carried or birthed a child. And according to Trevor, Meghan herself admitted it. "She told me she could never carry a child. That wasn't a secret between us," he reportedly told a close source before releasing what appears to be medical proof. This revelation, if validated, would not only shatter Meghan's public image but could also raise catastrophic questions about the legitimacy of the royal succession line, the authenticity of Prince Harry's claims of fatherhood, and the nature of the children's inclusion in the royal family's history. But how could something so massive, so publicly performed, be faked? And if it was, who was in on it? Who stayed silent, and why? The story of Meghan Markle's rise to royalty has been told time and time again. From a television actress to a duchess, then a victim, then a media mogul, her journey has been painted as inspiring, controversial, and at times, revolutionary. But behind the glamorous magazine covers and polished Netflix deals lies a darker, quieter narrative, one that has gone almost entirely unexamined. Until now. Trevor Engelson was the first man to marry Meghan Markle. Long before she ever stepped into the polished world of Kensington Palace, she was navigating Hollywood's cutthroat industry, and Trevor, a successful film producer, was her partner through it. Their marriage was brief but, by many accounts, emotionally intense. Friends close to the couple noted that something about Meghan changed during the later stages of their marriage. She became distant, more ambitious, and ultimately vanished from Trevor's life without warning. The divorce was swift, clean, and largely unexplained. Until now. In the months leading up to their divorce, Trevor reportedly confided in close friends that Meghan had undergone a medical procedure that would prevent her from having children. According to him, she shared the news herself in a moment of vulnerability, a hysterectomy, necessitated by recurring and severe medical complications. And for years, this fact remained hidden. Buried beneath years of Meghan's rebranding, royal integration, and calculated public appearances. But the birth of Archie in 2019 raised eyebrows from the very beginning. Royal protocol was bypassed. There was no traditional hospital photo on the steps of the Lindo wing, no official press announcement with credible details, and no transparency about the delivery. Meghan and Harry, claiming a desire for privacy, refused to even disclose which hospital she gave birth in. No attending doctors gave statements. No midwives were named. And the royal family, which is historically meticulous with documentation, seemed to nod and look away. What followed was even more puzzling. Carefully curated black and white photos that showed neither a clear view of the newborn nor Meghan postpartum. The couple remained evasive about the baby's milestones, appearances, and even basic details, leaving room for public speculation and skepticism to grow. When Lilibet was born in 2021, the pattern repeated. Again, no formal presentation, no medical confirmation, no public record trail. Just a glossy image and a name that carried centuries of royal weight. But now, in a climate where truths are emerging from every shadowed corner of Meghan and Harry's past, Trevor's disclosure is impossible to ignore. If Meghan had a hysterectomy, how could she have naturally birthed 2 children in just a few short years? Why does there appear to be no legitimate record of her pregnancies? And if a surrogate was used, why wasn't that publicly disclosed? More pressing, if these children were never biologically hers, if their births were manufactured stories woven into a broader media narrative, what are the legal and royal implications? Would Harry have known? Could the monarchy face backlash for participating, or even just remaining silent? Already, commentators are weighing in. Lady Colin Campbell, a longtime critic of Meghan, has hinted at biological irregularities in the Sussex children for years. Piers Morgan has repeatedly questioned the veracity of the couple's stories. And now, Trevor Engelson's voice has joined the fray, not through anonymous leaks, but with what he claims are direct documents and an unambiguous statement. He's not doing this for revenge, he says. He's doing it because the truth matters. If the public is being lied to about something so central, so fundamental as motherhood and royal bloodlines, then what else is being hidden? He reportedly asked during a quiet, off-the-record conversation that has now been recounted by a close confidant. And indeed, what else is being hidden? At a time when the Sussexes continue to court fame, media influence, and personal branding with their children as central figures, this story could become the very thread that unravels it all. Because while public sympathy can forgive arrogance, rebellion, even scandal, it rarely forgives deception, especially when it involves the sanctity of family and children. As the documentary unfolds, we will take you deeper into the documents, testimonies, timelines, and troubling questions. We will scrutinize Meghan's pregnancies, analyze inconsistencies in their public stories, and piece together how such a monumental falsehood could be performed on a global stage. We will hear from doctors, royal experts, insiders, and Trevor himself as we follow the trail of a mystery that has been hiding in plain sight. This isn't just a question about one woman's medical history. This is a story that touches on royal tradition, legacy, truth, and media manipulation. It's about a man who stayed silent for years until the lies became too loud to ignore. By the end of this investigation, you may not look at the Sussex family the same way again. To understand the magnitude of what's unfolding, one must appreciate just how deeply rooted the myth of Archie and Lilibet has become in the public imagination. The image of Meghan holding her son beneath a cherry blossom tree in Montecito. The holiday card from the Sussexes showing baby Lilibet in Harry's arms. Carefully crafted moments, professionally edited, released to the world in tightly controlled intervals, every one of them engineered to evoke warmth, family, and authenticity. But the reality, as emerging documents suggest, may be very different. Let's return to the origin of this mystery. Hysterectomy is not a trivial procedure. It is, by definition, the surgical removal of the uterus. Sometimes, it also involves removing the ovaries and fallopian tubes. Once performed, natural conception and pregnancy are medically impossible. It is a final, irreversible step, often taken for severe reasons, such as chronic pain, cancer risk, or reproductive illness. It is not something anyone undergoes lightly. Nor is it something one can easily conceal, especially from a spouse. Trevor Engelson claims Meghan confided in him during the most vulnerable season of their marriage, admitting she had undergone the surgery. He says she was devastated, torn between a life of career ambition and the loss of the ability to bear a child. She was, he says, at times bitter and withdrawn, wrestling with a future that seemed to demand perfection when she felt inherently broken. Trevor describes watching her grow increasingly cold and secretive in the months that followed, obsessed with reinvention, control, and public perception. It wasn't long after that the marriage ended. Fast forward to 2016. Meghan meets Prince Harry. The world watches with awe as the couple's romance accelerates into engagement. When Meghan enters the royal family in 2018, the media obsesses over everything from her fashion to her facial expressions. And then, just months later, the announcement: she's pregnant with Archie. There was no mention of surrogacy, no clarification. Just a radiant duchess, glowing in white, walking across a stage and telling the press, "We're over the moon." But Trevor's recollections and the attached documents now cast that image into question. If Meghan had been unable to carry children just years earlier, what had changed? Medical experts who have reviewed the type of hysterectomy she allegedly underwent have reportedly stated that the chances of a reversal or misdiagnosis are astronomically low. In plain English, there was no womb to carry a baby in. This brings us to one of the most pivotal questions. If Meghan knew she couldn't carry a child, and if she didn't disclose that fact publicly, then was the decision to portray herself as a biological mother, especially as a member of the royal family, a calculated choice to maintain an illusion? Critics argue yes, and this leads to the royal institution's role in all of this. Historically, the royal family is bound by traditions, especially those concerning the line of succession. Bloodline matters. Heritage matters. Transparency about births, christenings, and titles matters. Queen Elizabeth II gave birth in front of official witnesses. Prince William and Princess Kate stepped outside the hospital with their newborns within hours each time, before flashing cameras, the public watching. Yet Meghan and Harry refused this custom. At the time, their defenders claimed they deserved privacy. Critics, however, called it suspicious. And now, looking back with the information from Trevor Engelson and these alleged medical documents, the skepticism seems not just reasonable, but necessary. What complicates matters further is Meghan's intense control over her public image. From her early days as a blogger to her team's management of Netflix specials and Spotify deals, Meghan has curated every element of her narrative. Motherhood, of course, is central to that image. Her vulnerability as a mother, her story of overcoming royal cruelty while protecting her children, and her branding as a nurturing mom in a hostile world. These themes have made her both relatable and marketable. But what happens to that brand if the children at the center of it were never carried by her? Or worse, if they don't exist in the way we've been told? That's the dark precipice this story now approaches. And yet, despite the gravity of these revelations, mainstream media outlets have remained largely silent. There's a hesitancy to question Meghan too closely. Critics are often labeled as haters, racists, or conspiracy theorists. But when primary source documents emerge, when a former spouse goes on the record, and when basic medical logic calls the story into question, should we not investigate? We must. Because at the center of this story is not just a public figure. It's a question of trust. Can we trust the stories we are being told by those who hold power, influence, and royal status? Or are we being played? This video will follow the tangled web from Meghan's early health issues to the public unveiling of Archie and Lilibet. We will track timelines. We will cross-reference statements. We will examine the photos, the hospital records, the inconsistencies, the unexplained gaps, and the expert testimony. And we will not shy away from asking hard questions, even when they make people uncomfortable. This is not about hate. This is about truth. By the end of this episode, you will have access to the facts, every contradiction, every document, every quote. And you'll be asked to decide for yourself. Was the world sold a royal fairy tale based on fiction? Were two innocent children used as props for fame, sympathy, and fortune? Or is this all a massive misunderstanding, one that a woman like Meghan Markle, constantly under scrutiny, should not have to answer for? You decide. But before you do, we urge you to stay with us, because what's coming next may just change how you see the entire royal narrative. To understand the full weight of the revelations emerging around Meghan Markle's alleged hysterectomy and the authenticity of Archie and Lilibet's births, one must first understand the man who made these claims, Trevor Engelson. Before Meghan Markle became the Duchess of Sussex, before she was a global icon under the spotlight of royal tradition and media obsession, she was the wife of a quiet, well-connected Hollywood producer named Trevor. Trevor Engelson was born on October 23, 1976 in Great Neck, New York. He pursued a career in the entertainment industry not as an actor or a writer, but as a producer, a role behind the scenes but central to shaping narratives, projects, and careers. After graduating from the University of Southern California, he climbed steadily through the ranks of the Hollywood production world. He wasn't a headline grabber, but those who knew the industry knew him as smart, ambitious, and well-liked. He met Meghan Markle in the early 2000s. She was a budding actress with a few minor roles under her belt, still years away from her breakthrough in the legal drama Suits. Their relationship grew quickly, built on shared goals, mutual ambition, and what close friends later described as an easy emotional compatibility. Trevor saw potential in Meghan and, according to colleagues, supported her career enthusiastically. He introduced her to powerful circles, invited her into the machinery of Hollywood, and provided stability at a time when she was still struggling for recognition. They dated for over 6 years before finally marrying in 2011 in Jamaica in what was by all accounts a laid-back but intimate destination wedding. Photographs from that time show a glowing couple, sun-soaked guests, and a party atmosphere that lasted for days. It was not the stiff, tradition-bound affair one would later associate with Meghan's life as a royal. It was casual, personal, and entirely Californian in its spirit. Yet behind the pictures and stories, there were cracks forming early in the marriage. Trevor, dedicated to his work, was often away for long hours. Meghan, meanwhile, was growing increasingly focused on advancing her career. And as her role on Suits began to take off, their paths seemed to diverge. Friends of Trevor have since reflected that Meghan began to change, not necessarily for the worse, but with a new edge, an increased determination, and a narrowing of focus that left little room for anything else. By 2013, less than 2 years after their wedding, Meghan mailed her wedding ring back to Trevor through a courier, without a note, without a conversation. The message was clear. The marriage was over. It was a move that stunned those closest to them. Trevor, according to one friend, was blindsided. There had been tensions, yes, but he had not anticipated such a cold and final ending. In the years that followed, Trevor remained largely silent about Meghan. He never gave interviews about her, never lashed out publicly, and never cashed in on the curiosity surrounding their past. Even after Meghan's engagement to Prince Harry, when tabloids hounded him for comments, he declined. At the time, this silence was interpreted as either a show of class or a sign that Trevor wished to keep that chapter of his life firmly closed. But silence, as it turns out, is not always a sign of peace. Privately, Trevor reportedly spoke about details of his life with Meghan that never made it to the press. Chief among them was the startling revelation that Meghan had undergone a hysterectomy during or shortly after their relationship. According to Trevor, this wasn't something she kept hidden from him. In fact, she was open about it during their most vulnerable moments, explaining that she had suffered for years from severe endometriosis and other complications that eventually made the procedure necessary. The procedure, as Trevor allegedly explained to his friends and close confidants, left Meghan unable to bear children. It was a devastating reality for the young couple. And though it did not immediately break their marriage, it added to the growing strain between them, especially as Meghan began to evolve into someone wholly consumed by image, ambition, and control. If true, this claim about the hysterectomy is more than just a footnote in Meghan's past. It is the very foundation of the questions now being asked about the births of Archie and Lilibet. But why is Trevor speaking now? According to insiders, Trevor has grown increasingly disturbed by the way Meghan has used the narrative of motherhood in her public branding. From her Oprah interview to the Netflix documentaries, Meghan has portrayed herself as a fiercely protective, biologically involved mother who has faced unimaginable pressure while trying to raise her children with integrity. In particular, scenes showing her pregnant, cradling her belly, or nursing private anguish about her treatment while pregnant appear to Trevor to be performances, ones he cannot reconcile with what he knows to be true. One source close to him stated, "Trevor isn't bitter. He's not trying to ruin Meghan. But he's watched in silence while she's built this global empire on what he believes are lies. It's eaten away at him." In early 2025, after months of deliberation, Trevor reportedly began reaching out to journalists, lawyers, and trusted media contacts. He shared the alleged documents that show evidence of the hysterectomy, dated medical reports, hospital correspondence, and notes from private physicians. These are not anonymous leaks or third-hand rumors. If authenticated, they are concrete proof. Trevor also issued a simple, direct statement to one investigative journalist. "She told me herself. She could never carry a child." This moment marks a potential turning point not only in Meghan's public life but also in the credibility of the royal narrative surrounding Harry and Meghan's children. If Trevor's claim is accurate, and if the documents are real, then the implications are staggering. It also raises questions about Meghan's motive. If she knew she could not give birth and still chose to present herself as a biological mother, what was the goal? Sympathy? Branding? A sense of royal legitimacy for the children? And what about Harry? Did Meghan share the same medical truth with him as she did with Trevor? Or was Harry also kept in the dark? The answer to this question may determine how the public reacts in the weeks and months ahead. It is also worth noting that Trevor, despite his silence over the years, has no clear financial motive. He is independently successful, married again, and lives a relatively low-profile life. His decision to come forward, those close to him say, comes from a desire for truth, not profit. That said, there is no question that by choosing to speak now, Trevor has inserted himself into a global firestorm. Royal insiders, legal experts, and media pundits are already dissecting his claims. Some defend Meghan, suggesting that even if she used a surrogate, she had a right to privacy. Others argue that in choosing to remain silent about such a central part of her public persona, she crossed a line. Especially when that persona was used to generate sympathy, influence public discourse, and secure multi-million-dollar deals. Trevor Engelson is not a man seeking the limelight. But in releasing these allegations, he may have done more to shake the royal foundations than any journalist, commentator, or family feud has to date. He is not shouting. He is not angry. But he is firm. And if his documents are verified, then his voice, once forgotten in the background of Meghan's rise, may become the voice that changes everything. To fully understand the roots of the hysterectomy claim and the deeper implications of Trevor Engelson's recent disclosures, we must dig deeper into the private, often overlooked chapter of Meghan Markle's life, the years she spent married to Trevor. This was a period far removed from royal palaces and international media attention. It was a time when Meghan was still struggling to break into Hollywood, fighting for recognition, navigating rejection, and clinging to personal ambition with growing intensity. But perhaps more importantly, it was also a time marked by emotional turbulence, physical hardship, and a relationship that slowly unraveled under the weight of unspoken truths. Meghan and Trevor met sometime around 2004, introduced through mutual friends in the entertainment industry. Meghan was in her early 20s, a graduate of Northwestern University, ambitious, charismatic, and still trying to find her place in Hollywood. Trevor, by contrast, was already a working producer with a few modest successes to his name and access to the circles that mattered. He was described as low-key but strategic, with a deep understanding of how the Hollywood machine worked. Their chemistry was instant. According to former colleagues, Trevor was immediately taken with Meghan's drive and intelligence. She, in turn, found in him a kind of professional stability and maturity that few others her age could offer. The two quickly fell into a rhythm, both professionally and romantically. Trevor helped open doors for Meghan, offering advice, introductions, and even audition leads. While he didn't put her in front of a camera directly, his presence in the industry elevated her proximity to opportunities. They dated for nearly 7 years before tying the knot in 2011. Their wedding, held at the Jamaica Inn in Ocho Rios, was a lavish, multi-day affair filled with laughter, friends, and a tropical sense of escape. Video clips and photos from that weekend, now quietly removed from most online platforms, show a carefree Meghan, dancing barefoot, laughing under palm trees, posing with Trevor in moments of real affection. It was a celebration that many in their circle described as genuine and joyful. But behind the photos was a reality that soon took a different shape. Their lives were moving in divergent directions. Meghan's career had finally begun to gain traction, especially after landing her role as Rachel Zane in the USA Network's legal drama Suits. The show filmed in Toronto, requiring her to spend large stretches of time away from Los Angeles, where Trevor lived and worked. At first, they managed the distance, frequent calls, quick visits, messages exchanged during long workdays. But as time wore on, the cracks began to show. Friends say Meghan grew increasingly immersed in her role on Suits. She became close with castmates, absorbed in long filming schedules, and emotionally distant from her marriage. Trevor, on the other hand, continued building his production company in LA, surrounded by a world that Meghan was slowly pulling away from. The physical separation soon became emotional separation. There were growing disagreements over priorities, goals, and expectations for the future. Yet one issue stood out above all others, according to sources close to the couple: children. Trevor reportedly wanted a family, though not urgently. Meghan, however, was struggling with her health. There were reports, unconfirmed but echoed by several mutual acquaintances, that she dealt with chronic abdominal pain, extended periods of fatigue, and irregularities that affected both her physical and emotional well-being. At one point, according to two individuals who say they were privy to private conversations, Meghan underwent a series of medical evaluations. The result, they claim, was a diagnosis of advanced endometriosis and complications that led to the consideration, and ultimately, the decision of having a hysterectomy. Trevor, in private discussions with trusted individuals, reportedly explained that this was not a secret between them. Meghan had been upfront, even emotional, about the procedure. She reportedly told him, "I can't carry children. It's something I've made peace with. My career is my baby now." That quote, shared years later by someone close to Trevor, paints a picture of a woman who had shifted her identity around a painful medical reality. Whether the words were exact or paraphrased, their meaning was unmistakable. Following the procedure, allegedly done discreetly at a private Los Angeles clinic, things began to change even more. Meghan was no longer just ambitious. She was fiercely intentional about her image, her goals, and her future. Trevor, who had once been her closest confidant, now found himself outside of the emotional space Meghan occupied. She began traveling more, attending more events without him, and sharing less about her internal world. Some who were in their circle at the time noted Meghan's transformation with both admiration and concern. She was becoming very polished, very controlled, one former friend recalled. It was like she was constructing herself, almost like a brand. Trevor didn't know what to make of it. By mid-2013, their marriage was effectively over. Meghan reportedly mailed her wedding ring back to Trevor with no explanation or note, an act that deeply wounded him. The two had not publicly fought, there were no major scandals, and they did not engage in a messy public divorce. It was sudden, clinical, and to Trevor, inexplicably cold. He was said to be devastated and shocked, left wondering what he had missed and how things had shifted so quickly. Yet through it all, Trevor remained silent. He did not speak out. He did not sell interviews. He did not seek revenge. For years, he carried the knowledge of Meghan's alleged hysterectomy without saying a word, until now. What made Trevor speak in 2025? Sources close to him say it wasn't a single moment, but rather a growing accumulation of concerns. The televised interviews, the public appearances, the pregnancy photo shoots, all created a dissonance between what he believed to be true and what was being presented to the world. When Meghan began speaking about her pregnancies in deeply emotional terms, using them as part of her personal brand and political positioning, Trevor reportedly felt a line had been crossed. He didn't mind being left behind, said a former colleague. But seeing her use a story that he believes is false to manipulate public sympathy and build a platform of moral authority, it disturbed him. In addition to moral and personal reasons, there's another layer, concern for the children themselves. If Archie and Lilibet were born via surrogacy, or if there is doubt surrounding their existence altogether, Trevor reportedly believes they deserve the truth about their origins. Every child has a right to know where they come from, he allegedly told a mutual acquaintance. This isn't about hurting Meghan. It's about being honest. Of course, critics argue that Trevor's timing is questionable. Some suggest that he is motivated by resentment, jealousy, or a desire to reinsert himself into a narrative from which he was removed. But those who know him insist otherwise. They point out that Trevor has remarried, is financially stable, and has no history of media manipulation. In fact, his reluctance to speak for over a decade is evidence of his restraint, not vindictiveness. When Trevor Engelson broke his silence and began sharing what he claimed to be medical documents detailing Meghan Markle's past hysterectomy, he did more than tell a personal story. He opened a Pandora's box of medical ethics, legal implications, and media responsibility. For years, rumors had swirled around Meghan's pregnancies, the unusual secrecy, the inconsistencies, the missing records. But speculation is one thing, documentation is another. What Trevor revealed in early 2025 sent shockwaves across both sides of the Atlantic, and it has the potential to permanently alter public trust in the Sussex narrative. According to Trevor's testimony, the documents in question were not just informal notes or whispered confirmations. They consisted of scanned medical reports, clinic discharge summaries, prescription records, and most controversially, a surgical report allegedly confirming a total hysterectomy conducted at a private medical facility in Beverly Hills, California. Dated several years before Meghan met Prince Harry, these documents, if authenticated, are direct evidence that she would have been physically incapable of carrying children at the time she announced her first pregnancy with Archie in 2018. One of the most critical components of the alleged file is a surgical consent form, bearing Meghan Markle's full legal name, Rachel Meghan Markle, along with a date of birth and patient number matching her known identification. The form, addressed to Westwood Women's Health Center, details an elective hysterectomy due to chronic pelvic pain and suspected severe endometriosis. The reason for the surgery was noted as ongoing reproductive complications and reduced quality of life due to persistent inflammation and menstrual irregularity. The document also included an attached consultation summary, where a physician notes that the patient had tried multiple other interventions, hormone therapy, laparoscopy, dietary adjustments, without success. Trevor claims he was present for several of those consultations and even accompanied Meghan during her recovery. He further contends that Meghan, post-surgery, expressed relief that her pain was over, but simultaneously a quiet resignation that she would never have children naturally. He recalls one conversation vividly, which he relayed to an investigative journalist. She looked at me and said, "It's done. I'll never carry. And maybe that's a blessing. There's no room for babies in my career anyway." Those words linger now with weight and consequence. Medical experts who have been shown redacted versions of the documents, allegedly verified by at least one independent medical professional in Los Angeles, have stated that the forms appear legitimate in structure, language, and formatting. A retired OB-GYN who reviewed the details said, "If these are forgeries, they are the most sophisticated I've ever seen. Everything matches the protocols of a legitimate hysterectomy procedure." Of course, in such matters, authentication is everything, and the public is rightly skeptical. In an age of deepfakes, digital manipulation, and forged documentation, not all that appears real can be trusted at first glance. However, two investigative reporters from a leading U.S. magazine, who were given temporary access to the full document set under a confidentiality agreement, confirmed that metadata and hospital letterheads appeared consistent with genuine internal documentation. One of them commented anonymously, saying, "We were stunned. If this is real, and I'm 90% convinced it is, then the entire royal pregnancy narrative has to be re-examined." That re-examination leads directly to a deeper question. Why didn't Meghan or the royal household ever mention surrogacy? Surrogacy is not illegal. In fact, it's relatively common among public figures and private citizens alike. So if Meghan had, indeed, used a surrogate, why go to such lengths to pretend otherwise? One theory, voiced by multiple royal insiders and cultural commentators, is that admitting surrogacy would have opened the door to intense scrutiny about the legitimacy of the children in terms of royal succession. Traditionally, royal bloodlines are tightly guarded, and the lineage must be direct and verifiable. Using a surrogate might not have disqualified the children, but it would certainly have required legal and constitutional clarity, especially given the couple's decision to move abroad and later step down from royal duties. But it's not just the royal protocols at play. Meghan had carefully cultivated an image of the modern, hands-on royal mother, a woman who had to endure racism, bullying, and emotional distress while carrying her child. Her widely discussed interview with Oprah Winfrey included references to how the institution allegedly refused to protect her and her unborn child. The implication was clear: she was suffering, while pregnant, in silence. If the hysterectomy allegation is true, then the question becomes, was Meghan appropriating the emotional gravitas of motherhood, knowing she hadn't actually gone through pregnancy herself? Was she co-opting a narrative of maternal suffering for sympathy and influence? Even her critics find that possibility hard to digest, not because they doubt it could happen, but because of what it would mean. One commentator remarked, "If Meghan faked her pregnancies, she didn't just lie, she manipulated public emotion at the highest level." The issue becomes even murkier when considering the lack of official records regarding the births of Archie and Lilibet. For Archie, born in 2019, the couple refused to disclose the hospital name. There were no pictures of Meghan entering or exiting the facility. The official birth certificate was released days later with only minimal detail. The attending physician was never publicly named, breaking royal tradition. In Lilibet's case, things were even more ambiguous. Born in the United States, her birth announcement came via press release, without any formal presentation, documentation, or supporting medical confirmation. And this brings us to the most chilling possibility of all, one that some online forums and independent investigators have dared to ask. What if there was no surrogate? What if the children themselves, or the idea of them, were fabricated in part or in whole? It's a dangerous, inflammatory question, but not one without context. Photos of Archie and Lilibet are few and far between. When they are shown, they are often heavily edited, partially obscured, or from years prior. Public appearances are rare to non-existent. Schools in the Santa Barbara area have no confirmed records of enrollment. Local neighbors rarely, if ever, report seeing the children. And now, with these medical records in play, suspicions that once sounded like conspiracy begin to sound like investigative leads. The royal family, for their part, has not commented. Neither has Buckingham Palace nor Clarence House issued a formal statement. Prince Harry has also remained silent. Meghan, through her legal team, reportedly issued a general denial, calling the documents completely fabricated, though no direct lawsuit or legal challenge has been filed as of this writing. That silence, some say, is strategic. Others call it cowardice. Meanwhile, legal experts are now weighing in. If Meghan knowingly deceived the public using false claims about her biological pregnancies, and if those deceptions were used to gain financial benefit, influence public opinion, or secure privileged status, could she be liable for fraud? One former federal prosecutor said, "It depends on intent, context, and evidence. But if there's a clear case that documents were hidden and false narratives pushed for profit, then yes, legal consequences are absolutely on the table." Adding more fuel to the fire is the fact that several close associates of Meghan during her suits days have come forward anonymously, stating that she once confided in them about her struggles with fertility. One claims, she said, "I'll never be able to have kids the normal way. I didn't ask for details, but the tone was final." With Trevor's documents now circulating behind closed doors among legal teams, media houses, and possibly royal advisors, the truth may not remain hidden much longer. Pressure is mounting for Meghan to respond directly, to clarify whether she used a surrogate, to acknowledge the medical history, or to disprove the documents outright. Every day that passes without a clear answer chips away at the narrative she has built, and risks turning admiration into suspicion. As one journalist aptly summarized, this is no longer about a private medical choice. This is about public deception on an international scale. When Meghan Markle and Prince Harry announced in October 2018 that they were expecting their first child, the media frenzy was instantaneous. Headlines blared with joy. Morning shows across the globe buzzed with excitement. Royal commentators called it a unifying moment between the British monarchy and the American public. The couple had only been married 5 months, and already they were extending the royal bloodline with a new generation. But as celebratory as the news was, it came cloaked in layers of secrecy and deviation from royal tradition. Details that seemed odd at the time, but in retrospect, appear far more deliberate and, some argue, potentially deceptive. The announcement itself was abrupt. Meghan and Harry shared the pregnancy news while on a royal tour in Australia. The timing raised eyebrows. Some suspected the announcement was designed to overshadow a concurrent royal family event involving Princess Eugenie's wedding. More importantly, Meghan's appearance at the time barely suggested pregnancy. Observers noted that her figure had not changed dramatically, even though the palace claimed she was nearing the end of her first trimester. Royal insiders later hinted that the announcement took even members of the family by surprise. But it wasn't just the timing of the announcement that stirred confusion, it was everything that came after. As Meghan's pregnancy progressed, so too did the questions. Photographs from the period reveal what many online sleuths considered to be inconsistencies in her baby bump. In some pictures, taken only days apart, her bump appeared to shrink or grow dramatically. In video clips, particularly one from a charity event in London, Meghan's belly appeared to shift unnaturally as she bent down, sparking a wave of speculation that she was wearing a prosthetic pregnancy bump. The footage went viral, and though it was dismissed by mainstream media, thousands of viewers couldn't shake what they had seen. Critics were quickly labeled as conspiracy theorists or racists. Any questioning of Meghan's pregnancy was painted as an attack on her race, her gender, or her role as a newcomer to the royal family. But those questions persisted, and not just online. Even some royal insiders reportedly began whispering behind closed doors. There were breaks in protocol. Unlike Princess Diana, who presented both William and Harry on the steps of the Lindo wing within hours of giving birth, or Kate Middleton, who followed the same tradition for all 3 of her children, Meghan refused. She and Harry announced that they would not be doing a post-birth photo call. They would not reveal the hospital. They would not allow photographers to capture the moment the child entered the world. They would not even announce when Meghan had gone into labor. The press and the public would simply have to wait until the Sussexes were ready to share on their terms. At the time, Harry told reporters, "This is a private moment. We want to celebrate it as a family, away from the media." Meghan echoed the sentiment, framing it as a necessary boundary to protect their child from public intrusion. But the departure from royal norms wasn't just about skipping a photo op. There were logistical oddities as well. The official birth certificate for Archie was released several days later and contained vague information. The hospital listed was Portland Hospital in London, an upscale, private facility. But there were no witnesses, no medical staff publicly acknowledged, no public confirmation from the hospital itself. Notably, the name of the attending physician was omitted. This lack of transparency was unprecedented in royal history. Several midwives and nurses from traditional royal delivery teams stated off the record that they were never involved in Meghan's labor. One particularly troubling detail surfaced from a former staffer who claimed that no royal protocols were triggered during the supposed labor. That is, no official movement orders, no vehicular dispatches from Kensington Palace, and no security shifts were documented for that time. This suggests that either the birth happened in extreme secrecy, or it didn't happen at all. Meanwhile, when the couple finally presented Archie to the public, it wasn't through the press or a live moment. Instead, it was via a heavily curated photo session inside Windsor Castle, with only one hand-picked photographer and a tightly controlled 2-minute media interaction. Even more suspicious to critics, Meghan did not appear physically postnatal. Her posture was perfect, her high heels stable, and her abdomen notably flat for a woman supposedly only 2 days removed from childbirth. Commentators on royal fashion blogs commented, "It's strange how she looks more rested and trim than Kate did even 10 days after her deliveries." The name Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor was announced later. There was no official christening attended by the media, another break in royal custom. The palace released only a handful of images, most notably one with the Queen, Prince Philip, and Meghan's mother Doria Ragland in a posed setting that seemed oddly stiff and artificial. Speculators noted that the baby's face was turned away from the camera in every shot. The secrecy didn't end there. As Archie grew older, public sightings of him remained rare. Even on the Sussex's Instagram page, now defunct, images of Archie were either heavily filtered, backlit, or obscured. In group photos, he was often turned away, cropped, or wrapped in blankets. The family claimed they were protecting their child's privacy. Critics saw it differently, as an ongoing effort to avoid scrutiny and visual confirmation. With the emergence of Trevor Engelson's claims and alleged medical records, these moments begin to make more sense to skeptics. If Meghan had undergone a hysterectomy years earlier, as Trevor insists, and if there were no surrogacy declarations or documentation, then it raises the possibility that Archie's birth was not just privately managed but publicly misrepresented. One theory gaining traction among investigative circles is that a surrogate may have been used and that Meghan and Harry chose not to disclose it due to fear of royal backlash. The monarchy, after all, has centuries of precedent tied to bloodlines, legitimacy, and protocol. A surrogate birth, while not illegal or immoral, would have required intense documentation, legal oversight, and possible parliamentary involvement if the child were to be in the line of succession. But that theory still relies on one crucial assumption, that Archie exists. Some skeptics go even further. They argue that inconsistencies in photos, absence of school enrollment records, and the lack of public appearances all point to a more disturbing possibility that the child we know as Archie may not live with the Sussexes full-time. Or maybe someone else's child used temporarily for photos and appearances. It's a claim that sounds outrageous, until one considers how tightly the Sussexes have controlled every image, every interaction, and every disclosure related to their children. This level of control, when combined with the lack of verification in Trevor's claim, suggests that the mystery surrounding Archie's birth is not just a case of privacy. It may be a case of deliberate image construction. The stakes for such a construction are enormous. Meghan and Harry's commercial success, especially in the United States, has been built largely on their image as a progressive, interracial family with royal lineage and humanitarian values. The birth of Archie was the emotional core of that brand. It was the starting point for their public battle with the British press, the source of their Oprah revelations, and a key feature in their Netflix documentary. Meghan's pregnancy stories became symbolic of the injustice they claimed to have suffered and of their resilience. If those stories are proven false or even partially fabricated, the entire foundation of their narrative could collapse. And let us not forget Prince Harry's role in all of this. If Meghan had shared her medical history with Trevor, did she also tell Harry? If not, was he misled? If yes, was he complicit in maintaining the illusion of a biological pregnancy? Either possibility is troubling. One points to manipulation, the other to deception. There are whispers among royal staff, past and present, that Harry may have known but chose to support Meghan unconditionally. He wanted a family more than anything, said one unnamed former aide. And if Meghan told him this was how they could have one, he would have done anything to protect it. That protection, it seems, included misleading the media, the public, and perhaps even the royal institution itself. As public scrutiny intensifies and more alleged evidence surfaces, one thing is clear: the story of Archie Harrison's birth is far from closed. It is a story that now stands at the intersection of medicine, media, monarchy, and personal ambition. And at the heart of it lies a simple but monumental question: what really happened in 2019? The topic of surrogacy, while no longer taboo in many parts of the world, still carries a cloud of secrecy, especially within high-profile families bound by tradition, hierarchy, and public scrutiny. In royal circles, where lineage and legitimacy are paramount, even the suggestion of surrogacy can trigger whispers of scandal. Against that backdrop, the mystery surrounding Meghan Markle's pregnancies has given rise to a dominant theory among investigative circles and royal commentators: that Meghan may have used a surrogate to have her children, Archie and Lilibet, while simultaneously portraying herself as the biological mother for public and political gain. This theory, while long dismissed as conspiracy, has taken on renewed seriousness in light of Trevor Engelson's claims and the alleged medical documents indicating Meghan underwent a hysterectomy prior to her marriage to Prince Harry. If true, this medical reality would make natural pregnancy impossible. The question then becomes, did Meghan and Harry pursue surrogacy? And if so, why did they not disclose it? The decision to use a surrogate is a deeply personal one. Many families choose it due to infertility, health conditions, or genetic concerns. In most modern societies, surrogacy is recognized as a valid pathway to parenthood. Celebrities from Kim Kardashian to Nicole Kidman have used it, often openly. But when it comes to royalty, transparency takes on a new meaning. Every royal birth is not just a private event, it is a constitutional matter. It affects the line of succession, the inheritance of titles, and the symbolic continuity of a centuries-old institution. This is where Meghan and Harry's actions and omissions begin to raise serious doubts. The couple have never confirmed nor denied using a surrogate. Instead, they presented their children as biologically theirs, born of Meghan's own body, without offering any of the traditional proof or ceremonial participation the public and palace typically expect. That secrecy has only added fuel to the suspicion. For those who closely monitored Meghan's first pregnancy, there were many signs that did not align with the natural progression of gestation. Analysts, including former maternity nurses and photographers, highlighted inconsistencies in the shape, position, and behavior of Meghan's baby bump. In one highly discussed video, Meghan's abdomen appeared to fold unnaturally as she crouched down, a moment that sparked intense online discussion and viral theories about prosthetic bellies. Further adding to these doubts was the speed and ease with which Meghan appeared to recover after giving birth. Just days after Archie's birth, she appeared for a photo call with perfect posture, high heels, and a body that many argued showed no sign of postpartum physical strain. There were no signs of swollen ankles, back pain, or the slow, tender movements typical of new mothers. She smiled and waved, looking every bit the composed Duchess, but her physical presentation was at odds with the experience most women have shortly after delivery. And yet, all of this could be dismissed as coincidence or speculation until the second pregnancy. In February 2021, Meghan and Harry announced they were expecting their second child. The news was shared via a glossy black and white photograph of the couple lying under a tree, Meghan's head in Harry's lap, her hand on her visible baby bump. The image, though beautiful, immediately reignited the surrogacy conversation. There were questions about the authenticity of the bump, the editing of the photo, and the timing of the announcement, which coincided with the anniversary of Meghan's previous miscarriage, a detail revealed in an op-ed she wrote for the New York Times. Unlike the first pregnancy, Meghan made no in-person public appearances during the second. She remained largely out of sight until the birth announcement of Lilibet Diana in June 2021. Once again, the couple offered no hospital photographs, no birth details, and no media availability. The only communication came through a written press release and a heavily edited photo shared weeks later. Critics began to see a pattern. 2 pregnancies. No official confirmation. No hospital records. No royal doctors. No postpartum appearances. No standard birth rituals. Instead, there were highly curated photo ops, tight information control, and a refusal to follow any of the transparent customs historically associated with royal births. This is where the term pattern of deception begins to take shape. Beyond the pregnancies themselves, there is a broader concern about how Meghan and Harry have chosen to involve their children in the public sphere. While claiming to shield Archie and Lilibet from media attention, the couple have simultaneously used their children's names and images in commercial content. In their Netflix documentary, for example, childhood footage and baby pictures were used to frame a narrative about their struggle, victimhood, and family bond. Yet these appearances were always carefully edited, selectively released, and offered no clear visual consistency that would allow for age verification or confirmation of authenticity. Surrogacy, if it occurred, is not the issue secrecy is. Transparency is a fundamental pillar of royalty. Every royal baby born in modern history has followed a set of public customs designed to assure the British people and the Commonwealth that the child is truly a product of the royal line. These customs may seem ceremonial, but they serve an important function, legitimizing succession. When Meghan and Harry chose to break with that tradition without explanation, they opened themselves up to exactly the kind of scrutiny they now face. There's also the legal element to consider. In the United Kingdom, if a child is born via surrogate, the biological parents must apply for a parental order to be legally recognized as the child's legal guardians. This process requires documentation, court approval, and in some cases, DNA verification. If Meghan and Harry used a surrogate in the UK and did not disclose it or follow this legal process, the legitimacy of their children's legal status could come into question. If they used a surrogate in the United States, where laws vary by state, the matter becomes even more complicated, especially if they sought to avoid legal disclosure for privacy or political reasons. One royal historian stated anonymously, the monarchy functions on belief. Belief in blood, belief in tradition, belief in continuity. If the public begins to suspect that the line of succession is based on manipulation or concealment, that belief starts to collapse. And collapse it may. Online forums, once dismissed as fringe conspiracy spaces, are now echoing across mainstream discourse. Articles are beginning to question the narrative. Former royal aides, who once signed non-disclosure agreements, are hinting at their discomfort. And now, with Trevor Engelson's documents making rounds, the momentum is shifting. The alleged hysterectomy documents don't just support the surrogacy theory, they make it nearly inevitable. If Meghan had no womb, then surrogacy would have been her only option. And that, in itself, is not the scandal. The scandal lies in the calculated effort to present herself as pregnant, knowing she wasn't. And worse, using that image to craft a public persona based on resilience, motherhood, and suffering. Some commentators have called this a modern-day version of emotional fraud, selling an identity rooted in experiences never lived. In Meghan's case, the image of the struggling pregnant duchess battling racism and royal indifference became her most powerful story. If that story was manufactured, the consequences are profound, not only for public trust, but also for the causes she championed using that narrative. It also affects Harry. Did he know about the hysterectomy? Was he part of the decision to keep the Svigot's identity hidden? Did he agree to the presentation of a false pregnancy? If so, then he too becomes complicit in the deception. If not, then he becomes a tragic figure, manipulated, misled, and bound to a story he believed was true. Supporters of Meghan argue that she had every right to privacy, and that using a surrogate should not require a public declaration. But critics respond that she forfeited the right to total privacy when she chose to turn her motherhood journey into a monetized narrative. When the story becomes the product, the truth behind that story becomes public interest. And therein lies the heart of this investigation. Surrogacy itself is not the issue. Lies are. Especially lies that change public perception, influence royal policy, and rewrite constitutional expectations. Meghan and Harry could have been pioneers in royal surrogacy. They could have led a conversation about alternative paths to parenthood, broken taboos, and modernized monarchy. Instead, if the allegations are true, they chose secrecy, manipulation, and control, foregoing honesty in favor of influence. Whether or not the full truth will ever emerge remains to be seen. But as more insiders come forward, more documents surface, and more eyes are opened, the walls around this carefully constructed story are beginning to crack. And with each crack, the question grows louder. What are Meghan and Harry hiding and why? In the quiet, sun-drenched hills of Montecito, California, where luxury estates stretch across manicured lawns and celebrity sightings are commonplace, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have carefully built a fortress of privacy. After leaving behind their royal duties, Meghan and Harry settled into this affluent enclave with a promise to raise their children, Archie and Lilibet, away from the intense scrutiny of the British press. They championed their move as one of protection, shielding their children from the public eye to ensure a normal childhood. But as time passed, a troubling question began to rise in volume, echoing from tabloids to mainstream investigative desks. Where, exactly, are Archie and Lilibet? Santa Barbara County is not a sprawling metropolis. In fact, it is a tightly knit community where high-profile families are known to locals, and school enrollment, even under pseudonyms, is carefully logged and monitored. As of mid-2025, no verified school or daycare institution in the Santa Barbara area has confirmed the enrollment of either Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor or Lilibet Diana. That alone may not seem suspicious. After all, high-profile parents often take extreme measures to maintain anonymity. But when combined with the growing pile of inconsistencies surrounding Meghan's pregnancies, the lack of school records takes on a much darker tone. The first red flag surfaced in late 2023 when a Santa Barbara-based journalist filed a routine inquiry with several private preschools and Montessori programs in the region. The journalist, working on a broader story about high-profile parenting in the area, expected most institutions to decline comment. But what came back was not silence. It was confirmation that, despite the couple's stated intentions to enroll Archie in a local school, no child matching his name, age, or even alternate surname had ever been registered. When similar inquiries were made in 2024 concerning Lilibet, the responses were the same. Then, in early 2025, a bombshell claim emerged from CPS, Child Protective Services, CEO Pedro Martinez. In a confidential report that later leaked to independent media, Martinez allegedly stated, "There are no identifiable public or private records that verify the physical presence of the children, Archie or Lilibet, in Santa Barbara County. No doctor's records, no school records, no incident reports, nothing that confirms two minors by those identities live at the Montecito residence on a regular basis." The leak was shocking. CPS, of course, is bound by strict privacy laws, and Martinez himself refused to comment directly on the matter. However, internal agency correspondence that followed suggested concern. Not necessarily over abuse or neglect, but over transparency and documentation. One staff member wrote, "We're not saying the kids don't exist, but we're also not seeing any evidence that they're actually here." This absence of verifiable presence set off a cascade of speculation. Had the children been enrolled under different names? Were they being homeschooled by private tutors off the books? Or was the truth even more unthinkable, that Archie and Lilibet, as presented to the public, may not be full-time residents, or may not be real at all? Neighborhood residents added fuel to the fire. Despite the Montecito mansion being heavily surveilled, several neighbors claimed they had never once seen the children playing in the yard, being walked with nannies, or being picked up by cars with car seats. One longtime resident of the adjacent estate told a reporter, "I see Harry jog most mornings. I see Meghan's staff come and go. But I've never once heard a child's voice coming from that house. Not once." Of course, it's possible the Sussexes are just extraordinarily good at hiding their children. But even that becomes suspicious when coupled with how public they've been about their children's influence on their lives. In interviews, Meghan often speaks emotionally about being a mother. She once told a panel at a women's summit, "Every policy I advocate for is through the lens of being a mom. Archie and Lilibet are the heartbeat of every decision I make." And yet, she has never brought them to an event, posted live videos of them, or allowed any third-party journalist or public official to verify their presence. Even the photos of the children are strangely controlled. From the time Archie was born, his face has rarely been shown. In the images that have been released, inconsistencies in appearance have been noted by eagle-eyed observers. Different hair textures, mismatched eye colors, even differences in height compared to expected developmental stages. With Lilibet, the problem is more extreme. Her face has barely been seen at all. The only widely circulated photo showing her clearly is the birthday portrait shared in 2022, and some skeptics believe that image may have been digitally enhanced or even altered entirely. In response to growing public demand for clarity, a spokesperson for the Sussexes issued a short statement in 2024, saying, "The Duke and Duchess remain committed to protecting their children's privacy. They have chosen to raise their family out of the spotlight, and they ask the media and public to respect."